You're listening to the hexdevs podcast. I'm your host, Thiago.
And I'm your co-host, Stephanie.
This episode is sponsored by VanHack. VanHack helps tech talent get a job abroad. VanHack also helps companies hire amazing tech talent from all over the world.
Gui Vieira, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for coming today.
Sure.
So Gui is from Brazil and we work together at Lendesk, and he has many years of experience with Ruby on Rails, and he's also the maintainer of the shoulda-matchers gem. So if you are a Rails developer, I'm sure you've heard about it. So we're really excited to talk about all of that things with Gui.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background?
Sure. So I'm Gui Vieira. I'm a senior software developer. I'm originally from São Paulo, Brazil. I moved to Canada a few months ago, in the beginning of this year.
Welcome to Vancouver.
Thank you. Yeah, I really enjoy the city. Yeah, it's amazing. And yeah, probably one of the best place to be a developer. So yeah, been working with Ruby on Rails and some other technologies for a few years, and as she mentioned, also one of the maintainers of the shoulda-matchers testing library, very known for like many Ruby developers. Sometimes it comes like, some people think that it's like a default library. It comes with RSpec, but actually not. It's a separate library.
That's a library from Thoughtbot?
Yeah. The Thoughtbot, they created a lot of gems like FactoryBot, Suspenders, and also shoulda and shoulda-matchers. And they maintain some of those libraries, but some of them are not maintained by Thoughtbot employees anymore, like shoulda-matchers.
And how did you end up being the current maintainer of the project?
So when Rails 5 was being getting some pre-release versions, like all alpha and beta versions, I was a really early adopter, and I upgraded my app to Rails 5 alpha or beta 1 or 2. And then I realized that some libraries were not compatible with the upcoming Rails 5. And one of them was shoulda-matchers, so I started doing some small contributions, making the library compatible with Rails 5, solving also some deprecation messages that, they are so annoying in tests. And yeah, but little by little I got more involved in the project, and after like some few contributions, I got like commit access, and then I also got like permissions to release, to really become an admin of the project and a maintainer of the project.
Mm-hmm. And how long has it been since you are maintaining it?
So I started contributing to shoulda-matchers in 2014 or 15. As the maintainer, one of the maintainers. There's another guy that maintains a lot, that is a former employee of Thoughtbot. I got like all the permissions and everything. I think it was 2017 or so. Yeah.
Interesting. And had you contributed to other open source projects before? Was that your first experience?
No, actually I did some other contributions before shoulda-matchers. I was very involved on payment systems, so I was contributing to some libraries with payment methods integration, like credit cards, banks, especially for Brazilian banks and Brazilian credit cards. It was a time where the Nokogiri gem was getting a lot of vulnerability issues because dependencies on like some external libraries. So almost every month, those libraries needed to have some updates on the minimum versions of Nokogiri, some documentation, and sometimes those libraries, sometimes they don't get all features that the company provides. Sometimes you have an incomplete access to all the API features. So I did some contributions, especially for gems that provide integration with payment methods, credit cards, and banks before.
Yeah, I used to work with that kind of stuff, like payments and banking related stuff, and it's super annoying in Brazil because nothing is there's no standard, so you have to like figure out how to do this payment for this processor, and so.
Yeah, it's tricky to maintain this kind of project. Sometimes companies provide some support for the gem, but sometimes you need some input from the community to improve the gem, to add new features, and have maybe a more robust gem as well.
Mm-hmm. And why did you decide to contribute to open source projects? Like, I know a lot of people that, like you, has a lot of experience in software development, but not a lot of people contribute to open source. So what motivated you to start?
My motivation was to fix things. Sometimes things were breaking or not compatible with new versions of Ruby or Rails, or sometimes you have a new nice feature available on the company API but not in the gem. So it was like more a motivation of fix things and adding new features, and sometimes being early adopter of Rails or any other technologies. It's easier to spot places that can be improved, and helps a lot. I remember my first contribution for shoulda-matchers. I was getting like some code reviews from other maintainer, and it was like very basic code, but you learn a lot because you are working with other people that have other experience. They can help you a lot to improve your code before merging, and I never have any negative experience in open source. Like, people are very open to receive contributions, and the more you contribute, the gem or library gets better, and then you start to encourage other people to contribute to the project as well.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that the quality of your code when you're working, like when you're doing like closed source stuff for your company, and the code you do for open source, do you think that the quality is superior when you're doing open source? Is there a difference?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, most like big open source projects, they have very high code standards. I'm not saying that you need to do fancy stuff. Most of times you are encouraged to do very simple stuff, but most of open source projects have some standards, and you have some iterations. You need to improve your code, improve documentation as well before merging it, and also it's hard to release new versions because you are impacting thousands of production apps. So you need to be very strict, but it doesn't mean that it's hard, but you need to do like your best there. And it's also a place to improve your skills because you get input from other people and you end up with a nice code. You learn a lot, and a lot of open source projects, they rely on some CI integrations and some static analysis like code climate, and to keep the code base healthy.
Mm-hmm. And how do you start, like, actually, let me rephrase that. Let's say that I want to start contributing to open source. How do I find the project? Like, should I try finding one that solves a problem that I like, or should I try fixing something that I use daily? What do you think could be an approach for people that haven't contributed yet but want first to find which projects to contribute to?
Okay, I think you should search for projects that you use daily, especially libraries, gems, or tools that you really like, you enjoy, and that will motivate you to contribute. And some open source projects, they have some labels for issues that can be very easy for new contributions. Especially there's some new ways of doing this. The Rust community, like with the Rust language and other libraries, they are very good on this. They have special labels for it's a good issue for first-time contributors, or so that's something that we also do in shoulda-matchers, but it's nice in the Rust community. That's something that started with the language, and now most of libraries have the same approach. And it's so nice because they tend to use the same labeling system. So sometimes there are some mailing, like weekly, Rust weekly, this kind of mailing newsletter that basically they go to some repositories, they filter by labels, and they publish like 10 or so issues that are very easy for new contributors, and people get on their email and they start contributing right away. Most of them can be like very low-hanging fruits, or there are some contributions that people don't think they are really like they are really like worth the effort. But sometimes when I get a contribution just to update the Ruby version on CI, or a typo on the documentation, or some documentation that is incomplete, I feel so happy when I get this kind of contribution, because it's so useful, it has high impact on the users, and it's there, and there are a lot of them everywhere. Incomplete documentations, outdated versions in CI, or so. Yeah, there are a lot of stuff that can be done with very, very little like friction, and everyone with any code skill can do.
Yeah, so you said that the Rust community is a good community to help, and also the Ruby community is very friendly. Do you know any other communities that are like nice to contributors, or that are fun?
Yeah, the Elixir community, it's very friendly as well. Very.
That's true.
Yeah, yeah. The Elixir community is awesome. It's basically the Ruby community 2.0, something like this. The Go community is very good as well. They have many projects that you can contribute to. So I think for the language and ecosystems that I'm more familiar with, definitely Ruby, Elixir, Rust, and Go. They all have very nice and friendly communities. Just like contributing for the Ruby language can be harder because it's mostly written in C. There's a lot of like Ruby code, especially for standard libraries, but that you can contribute just knowing Ruby. You don't need to know C to contribute to the Ruby language. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The reason I was asking your advice on how to finding projects to contribute to is because I was talking to my team lead that I really wanted to try having like once a week, at least 1 hour for the team to contribute to open source projects, because I think that is really, really valuable. And the project is built on Ruby on Rails, which by itself is open source. So we have a lot to give back to the community. But then I was like, but I don't know which projects can we contribute to. Maybe that can be like our first task. I don't know.
Shoulda-matchers.
Yeah, now we already know.
Yeah. I think every project use gems or libraries that they know that could be improved. Yeah, because we use them on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. Thinking about the maintainer side, how do you make sure that people's contribution are being replied to? How do you find the time to deal with the maintainer's responsibilities? Like, you have to review the code reviews, you have to create the issues. How do you handle all of that?
Yeah, so a project like shoulda-matchers, it's well known, so people create issues themselves. Sometimes I have some plans for the project, so I create a few ones as well. But creating issues is the easy part. The hard part is bug triage and issues triage as well. It takes a lot of time. A lot of issues or like bugs are not related to the library itself. They are more related to some like behavior that was overridden. So, but anyway, you should help the person anyways. So all the issue and bug triage, that's the hardest part. And you need to do like it regularly, because they are a lot that they can pile up. And because even bugs that are not actually bugs, it's not nice to leave them for like 2 or 3 weeks. It's very nice when you can reply a bug or an issue the same day or the next day. People feel very they feel that there are people working there, and they feel that the maintainers really care about the user. So as soon as you get an issue or a PR, it's very important to reply like the fastest as you can, even if you are not doing like a final answer. This is an issue or this is a bug. Even sometimes you just need more information. So if you need more information, it's important not to wait for 1 or 2 weeks to ask for more information, because sometimes that person is delivering a project, it has its own deadlines, it's depending on some answer. Yeah, but it's hard to find time, but you eventually find.
What do you think about the sponsor feature on GitHub now? Because people now can sponsor projects easily.
Yeah, it's promising. There are a lot of projects that, like Open Collective, that they gather funds to sponsor some very important open source projects. There are a lot of big open source projects that started in a company and then now they are maintained by the community, but they need people to work regularly and maintain. The GitHub feature, the sponsorship feature, should help because it's very close to the code. Like you see the code, you can sponsor, especially for small contributions. I'm not sure how they are planning to get like company contributions, company support, but at least for small contributions, it can help. Just like Patreon does for a lot of other content creators. Yeah.
Nice. And you mentioned about the Elixir community. You have also worked with Elixir, right?
Yeah. So like being a Brazilian, like you see, I could see the Elixir community growing. And yeah, I use Elixir in some projects. It can be very helpful for companies that are growing a lot and they have some scalability issues. Yeah, it's a pretty nice ecosystem, good community built over Erlang that's very good and like well maintained as well. So it's one of the technologies that are very promising. Actually, it's already being used by big companies on big projects, but it for sure it has more room to grow.
Interesting.
Did you ever contribute to any open source Elixir project?
No, not yet. There's a couple open source projects. One of them it's targeted to Elixir that I really want to contribute to. That's called...
You can remember it later.
Yeah, I don't remember the name now. Oh, it's not Liquid. Liquid's from Shopify. Something like this. But it's implementation of a kind of Erlang VM in WebAssembly. Obviously started to Elixir users, but it's an implementation of the Erlang VM. But it's actually written in Rust.
That's cool.
Yeah, so that's a very nice project. It's very promising. It's not actually a VM, but it has a lot of the niceties of the Bean VM, the Erlang VM. So that's a project that I would love to contribute to, despite forgetting the name. But yeah, but it's actually written in Rust, so I've been studying Rust a lot lately because there's so many open source projects very promising written in Rust. Another one is Ruby implementation written in Rust as well. It can be compiled to WebAssembly. You can just run Ruby in the browser. Okay, so after doing some Googling here, yeah, the name of the implementation, the WebAssembly implementation of the Erlang VM written in Rust is Lumen. Okay.
Okay, so going back a little bit to, well, it's related to the shoulda-matchers jam. My question is about testing. I must say that I still don't feel quite comfortable writing tests. Like, I still feel like I don't understand it fully, especially with RSpec, because you have so many things involved. Just to test something, you have to write so many other things, right? So that it's still overwhelming to me. Like, I'm getting better at it, I'm studying it, but it's I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm just writing code. Like, I don't know if I'm just writing code or if I'm really writing a test. Like,
okay.
It's fine. So, what is your advice to getting better at testing? Like, especially for beginners, because nowadays, like, testing is becoming more popular, but it's something that you learn a few months or years after you learn how to code.
Yeah, it takes a while to get comfortable with tests, maybe years. For beginners, or if you are not comfortable with tests at all, you could try to start with integration tests. So if you have a full app that actually render pages, you can use integration tests. For Rails, you can use Capybara or similar ones. Rails has integration tests built in now as well. And if you have an API, you can do request test. That it's a kind of integration test as well, because you know your final goal, you know the main behavior that you are targeting to. You know the main behavior that you need to have, like, at the end of your code. For unit tests, it can get more tricky. It's hard to know if you are testing too much or too little. But it works the same. For a class, you have a public method. You can think the behavior that you want the method to have. So if I pass the arguments, which behavior should I have? And sometimes it's possible that for this case, an argument can be new, like an empty value. So how those new values are handled? Should they explode, raise an error, an exception, or it should be like more they should, I don't know, it's case by case, but basically testing the expected output for different inputs should be a very good way to test. And if you are testing the public method, you don't need to care about the actual implementation. Like the other methods, the private methods, we usually don't test them. It's more testing the behavior than the implementation. So if you have a very clear idea of the final behavior, you can start doing on the integration level and then on the unit level for public methods.
Yeah, the integration tests are really cool. Yeah, I remember that on my last project I was using the new Rails system tests a lot.
Oh.
That was pretty fun, actually.
Yeah, it's fun.
You don't feel like you're testing. I don't know. It's quite nice because you see like the computer doing all of the stuff, and it's exactly like you said. You already have in mind what you want to see, so I think it's easier. Yeah.
Yeah. Integration tests can be fun. if you have the opportunity to use them, you should definitely use. Same for APIs, you can use request tests. And for me, like doing TDD on a daily basis, it makes development a more nice and enjoyable experience, because I'm more confident of the code and everything is working, nothing's breaking, so let's just ship it.
Yeah, that is a good practice. I think that some people don't quite understand what is the value of TDD, so they don't try it, I guess. But I think that it's because it's really hard to try it by yourself, like at first. I think that when you see someone else applying that technique and then you understand the benefits of it, then it gets easier, because then you see, oh, that's a different way of developing, right? But that said, do you think that TDD is applicable to any projects, or is there some type of project that comes up in your mind where you say, well, it might not be a good fit for TDD?
The bad projects?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like a few years ago, some people could argue that sometimes it slows the development down. But even Thoughtbot, they started going to some hackathons and using TDD in hackathons, and they could prove that they were very successful on doing TDD at hackathons with very limited time and resources. I don't see. Okay, you don't need to be very strict with TDD. Sometimes you need to explore some code, especially if you are on a new code base, or you're just experimenting how to solve some kind of problem. So that's okay. Just explore a bit, and when you see a good path to continue your development, you can then start writing some tests. It shouldn't be like the strict red, green, and refactor from the beginning. You totally can explore a bit before actually doing tests. But I think like testing code is a practice for modern development, and there's no way out.
So it's almost like a muscle that you have to train. Like testing is kind of a muscle. Like when you start doing tests, you kind of don't understand them very well. It's hard to test, but then after a while, after some training, it becomes easier and easier, and then it becomes more obvious. Like, oh, how should I test this, and how should I write the code to make it easy for me to test it?
Yeah. It's just like coding. The beginning is very hard, but then you have some muscle memory, and after a while, when you get more comfortable with tests, when it's being like hard to write tests, maybe your code or approach is not the best one. That's another benefit of writing tests. If your code is very hard to test, maybe you should be doing another approach.
So getting back in time a little bit, so you have a BA, right?
Yeah, I have.
And a lot of experience with digital arts. You also started an online business, which was about computer graphics education. So you created this educational platform and ran the business for 6 years. Were you also like a teacher? Were you teaching digital arts?
Yeah, I have a BA in digital arts. It's audiovisual. My main focus was computer graphics, especially 3D and visual effects. So I worked on this area for many years, And then after a while, I started teaching, and I ended up creating an online platform for computer graphic courses. And it was a very, very nice experience, one of my most intense professional experiences. So basically, I locked it on my apartment for a year, and I built the online platform, and I ran the business for many years. It was very nice and successful, and it was very rewarding because through education we can actually change people's lives, or at least help them to achieve their goals. Yeah, and that was a very nice, intense experience. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. And did you, but you had a BA, so how did you learn how to code in order to build the platform?
Okay, yeah, so coding, it was something that I was always curious to try. I did some coding when I was a kid, like basic. I used to have a MXX computer where I could do some like small games and menus to like when it loads like game A to loads game B. But when I started my at the college, I went to another path that I could work with computers, but in a more applied way. So since the beginning, I was more involved with computer graphics and post-production, video encoding, streaming, and visual effects. I wasn't actually programming, but I was doing a lot of things with computers, managing large files and encodings and a lot. And then I started coding to automate some stuff. So coding since the beginning was a way to improve things, and yeah, a way of improve your professional like skills and make your professional life easier. And then I started learning more, but when I decided to create the online platform for computer graphic courses, it was like all in. I needed to study like full time, and while I was building some stuff. So since the beginning, coding was always related to building projects, shipping actual features for customers or students.
Yeah, that's really cool. And tell me about the business. Like, did you have a lot of people, a lot of subscribers to your platform? How was that working?
It was very nice. We had about 2,500 students in 6 or 7 years. And yeah, it was a very intense experience. I could work with awesome people, awesome teachers, having a very nice staff, and I could see a lot of people improving their lives through education. Sometimes they were changing careers as well. So definitely it was a very rewarding experience. It wasn't easy to live, but yeah, sometimes you need to move on, and because sometimes you have other doors opening to you, and you need to move on.
Mm-hmm. And do you miss having your own company like that? Do you think about doing the same here in Canada?
Yes. So I'm learning a lot, like new country, new culture. Definitely the way companies are built here are very different. We have more funding opportunities here. And I don't have any short-term plans for another company, but that's something that I know that eventually will happen again.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yeah, someone said that once you are a founder, you can never go back, So if you're a founder, you're always a founder. So eventually, even if you're working for someone else, for a company, you still have that mindset of, hey, I could build this, I could make this better, I could maybe turn this into a more profitable business or something like that. So I think that when you get that experience of building something from nothing, you get so much experience from that, and then you can apply that to everything, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you definitely have some different insights because you're not just seeing the code, but you're actually aware of the business. Yep.
Mm-hmm. So how did you end up here in Vancouver?
Yeah, so I lived in London with my wife for 1.5 years. Then we moved back to Brazil, and then realized that we wanted to move abroad again. We could move back to London, but Brexit and everything else. And I've been in Canada 12 years ago, just for a month, just to visit, and I knew that it could be a good opportunity for us. So after realizing that we wanted to move abroad, Canada was the best option. We like the Canadian culture, and it is a good fit for us. So when we decided to go to Canada, we started to study for language exams and everything. And after a few months, a friend of mine told me about VanHack, so this company that does recruitment only for relocation positions with relocation. And after joining VanHack, I was contacted by a company 1 or 2 months after, and then I got hired by a Canadian company that's based here in Vancouver. I started working remotely for them, and after a few months, we started the process for the work permit, the visa that allows to work in Canada. But before this, me and my wife, we were applying for the permanent residence. So basically, I was applying for the work permit, and she was like the main applicant for the permanent residence. And then, so after a few months, I got my work permit, we moved to Canada, and then a few months, we got our PR. So
congrats.
Yeah, so we started with the PR, then I got the work permit, and after moving, the PR process was complete. So we are very happy now. We are more stable here. So yeah, really, really happy to be here.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Which process was it? Was it the global skills?
Yeah, it was the global talent
skills.
Stream, I guess.
Global talent stream. Yeah, it's supposed to be a very fast process, but the final phase of my process was during the holidays, during the holiday season. So it was supposed to take 2 weeks and took like 9. And yeah, but that's okay. Yeah, but
you're here?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, sure.
Nice.
Yeah, I went through the same process, the global talent stream, and for me, it took me 2 weeks.
Oh.
Yeah, but it was August? No, it was.
I think it was
November.
October,
October, yeah,
November.
October, yeah.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, we also applied for the PR. Now we have the PR too.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome.
And so, how was the process of applying to the jobs in Canada? How did you find it really hard? Like the technical tests, the interviews?
Yeah. So when I joined VanHack, I applied for a few positions, but I didn't get any answer from them. And after a while, a company contacted me directly without having their position listed. So basically, they had like probably access to the database, to the developers base, and they contacted some of them. About the hiring process, it's hard in the beginning because it's in another language. I had some preparation classes for interviews with VanHack as well. That helped a lot, especially to adapt to like cultural differences in interviews. It's very easy to adapt, but it's so much easier when you have someone that, that's the way it works here, and it helps a lot. And but about the technical challenges, like coding challenge, they are almost the same that we have in Brazil. Sometimes they are small projects, or you need to pair with someone else on a small project, maybe fixing an issue or doing some code reviews for a very specific project.
Mm-hmm. And from your Canadian experience, what do you find it more different from the Brazilian experience?
For work or for
everything? From work,
yeah. The work culture in Canada, it's very good. They have a very good balance in between. They value work-life balance here, and that's something that helps a lot. What else? It's companies tend to be a very safe place to work. You usually have a lot of support when you need, and in a city like Vancouver, you have so many companies that are eager to grow, and so there are a lot of opportunities to doing some improvements. They are usually very open-minded, and they accept new ideas or contributions to their projects, especially if they help the company to grow or to make things simpler as well, or if you have some ideas to make the code base more maintainable as well. So it's a very nice work culture here. It's very easy to adapt to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that here, especially in Vancouver, you're not always running. Are you from São Paulo?
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
So in São Paulo, you're always running, you're always rushing. There's rush hour, and there's traffic, and there's a bunch of stuff to do, and have to pay your bills. But here in Vancouver, you have like a simpler life, I'd say, like a nicer life.
Yeah, it's definitely a very nice city. So you have more time to enjoy time with your family, or to go out even on weekdays. Sometimes in Brazil, people are just okay not doing anything on weekdays. And here you have the nature, you have so many outdoor stuff to do here, and yeah, it's definitely a very nice city to be.
Do you think that being an open source contributor helped you get a job here?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I have to ask the people that hire me. I never asked them about this. It definitely helps because you are hiring someone that you don't know, but you are already running his or her code on your project. And it's not breaking, so yeah, it can be good.
That's a good headline for your resume.
Yeah.
You're probably running my code.
Yeah.
Just pay me.
Yeah. But that's something that I need to ask people that hire me. Yeah, it can help, and it can be another reason to contribute to open source projects. But if you want to contribute to open source projects, you don't have to have this mindset. Oh, I'm just doing some contributions. It can help me to get hired. It can, but there are other things that you can do to improve your skills as well. For open source projects, if you contribute to projects that you actually use, it will be a very nice and useful contribution anyways. It will be useful for you, for your company, and for all the community as well.
Mm-hmm. And what are your plans for the future? Do you plan to go back to working with Elixir, or maybe working with other technologies? Rust?
Yeah, so plans for the future, that's tricky because so many things changed in like the last 2 years. I'm still adapting to my new lifestyle and really enjoying it. I've been learning other languages as well, Elixir, Rust, mainly a bit of Go as well. It's more because learning other languages, especially modern languages like those, it makes your code better in your like day-to-day language. I remember when I started studying and working with Elixir, my Ruby code changed a lot. I'm not saying that I'm doing like functional fancy stuff in Ruby. It's more that you are exposed to different ways of achieving the same goals, and it helps a lot. So for now, when I am learning Elixir or Rust, it's more to improve my skills, and they are awesome languages. Like, it totally works to learn them. And probably for the future, especially Rust, I think can be very useful to contribute to some open source projects as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that also that can also be applied to not only programming languages, but also like learning a new language. Like when you get here and you start speaking in English, you kind of learn how to express yourself in a different way as well. You can get a lot from a culture from their languages.
Yeah.
And also the fact that we all came from a different background, that also gives us a broader perspective. And just to speak English, for example.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah. When you expose yourself to different experiences, you don't have to like move to China if you are learning Mandarin. Yeah, but it definitely helps you to be more aware of your day-to-day or native or second language. Same for programming languages. When you're exposed to different languages, especially modern ones. There's so many modern languages and awesome ecosystems. We are in a time where we have so many good stuff being done, and definitely helps a lot when you learn them.
So Gui, if someone that is listening to us right now want to reach out to you, how can they find you?
Yeah, I'm not very active on Twitter or any other social networks, but you definitely can find me at LinkedIn. My name is Gui Vieira. It's Guiviera. And on GitHub as well, it's Guialbook. It's Guialbuk. You can find me on GitHub as well.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to contribute to shoulda-matchers,
yeah, just take a open issue or send me an email or a message, something like this.
Cool.
Gui, that was a really interesting conversation. Thank you so much for coming here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, we learned a ton. Thanks so much for coming and sharing your experience with us. I hope that this will inspire people so they can maybe contribute to some open source projects. Maybe they can think about it. Maybe they can sponsor some projects. Some companies could do that. So thank you very much for coming today.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And if you enjoyed this conversation, feel free to reach out to Gui and let him know that this was a cool conversation that you enjoyed.